Smart, smart, do. We are the children, the children of God. Come, come, come. We change our world. We have what it takes to do it smart and make it smart. Welcome to our Smart Do.
Welcome, Class 6s, once again for today's lesson. We are still going on with the topic breaking the bread. Now, today we are going to look at the meaning of Passover. The meaning of Passover. Now, from the word itself, Passover simply means to move from one side to the other. To move from one side to the other. For example, at times when we are along the roads traveling, we have bridges that are built, and we say they are passing over. They are moving from one side to the other of the road. So that is the meaning of Passover. Now, in this case of today's lesson, we are going to learn it according to the biblical way. What is the biblical meaning of Passover? Now, Passover in the Bible means the angel of death passing over the Israelites' houses and entering the Egyptians' houses. Now, why did this happen? Why did the angel of death pass over the Israelites' houses and enter the Egyptian houses? Now, Israelites were slaves in Egypt. And their time to stay in Egypt had come to an end. God had heard their cries, and he was now ready to free them from the Egyptians. But the king of Egypt, Pharaoh, had hardened his heart, and he did not want to release the children of Israel. So God decided to punish the Egyptians. And the thing that was to happen was that God was going to kill all the first-born male children of human beings and animals in the whole of Egypt, so that Pharaoh would release the Israelites to be free. So the Passover was a meal that was taken during that time. The Passover meal. There was a meal that was taken during that time. The angel of death was to pass over the Israelites' houses. And this meal was called the Passover meal. Now, and in that meal, what was there? What was to be done? One, there was a slaughtering of a young lamb or goat. A young lamb or goat. These were the instructions that God had given to Moses to give to the Israelites. Now, once they slaughtered, the meat was to be roasted. The meat was to be roasted. Another thing about the meat, there was no breaking of bones. There was no breaking of bones. So any part of the body was to be roasted without breaking the bone into pieces. Now, nothing about that was to happen was that is number 4, was that the meat was to be eaten with unleavened bread. Now, this is a bread that did not have yeast. Why? Because there was no time to put yeast in the bread and allow it to remain together. Very good. Another thing that was to happen during the meal of the Passover, the food was to be eaten. This food was to be eaten with bitter herbs. Why bitter herbs? The bitter herbs were to represent, they were representing suffering of the Israelites for the many years that they had been in Egypt as slaves. For the many years that they had been in Egypt as slaves. The food was to be eaten while standing. Eaten while standing, holding their walking staff. Holding their walking staff. Another thing that was to happen was that there was no going outside. No going outside. Why? Because if you would be found outside by the angel of death, we mentioned at the beginning, he would kill you. Because there wasn't any mark to protect you. And the mark that the Israelites were to use to protect themselves was of the blood of the animals he had killed. They were to apply it at the doorposts, at the top part of the doorpost, so that the angel of death, whenever he saw that mark, he would pass over. He would pass over the house and go into the house that didn't have that mark. Now, once that was done, God was ready. Once the angel of death passed over the Israelites' houses, God was ready now to set them free, because Pharaoh had softened his heart and he was willing to let the children of Israel go. So the story of this Passover meal is found in the book of Exodus, chapter 12. Exodus chapter 12 is found in the book of Exodus chapter 12, verse 21 to 28. Exodus chapter 12, verse 21 to 28. And from there, we read about the first Passover that took place in Egypt. So the Lord told Moses to call the leaders and say to them, each of you is to choose a young lamb or a young goat and kill it, so that your families can celebrate Passover. Right? Take a sprig of hyssop, dip it in the bowl containing the animal's blood, and wipe the blood on the doorsteps and the beam. The doorsteps and the beam. And not one of you is to leave the house until morning. So we can see that God had already given Moses the instructions that were to take place during the Passover meal. And the Israelites had to obey them to the letter. If they did not do that, they would die in the process, which would have been very bad for them. Otherwise, whenever we are given instructions, let's make sure that we follow them just like the Israelites did during the Passover meal. Have a good time. We shall meet during another lesson. Goodbye.